Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is January 26, 2023. This is episode 807. I am James Jones. I'm joined today by Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, ahoy, everyone.
Guillaume Fayette.
Hello.
John Lindemann.
Great to be here, James.
And that is the entirety of our crew. We're going to get right down to new business because I have decided that we're going to be ruthlessly efficient. And I will start new business because I don't have the newest business anymore, but, well, maybe. It depends on how you want to look at it. I have, in an absolute timescale sense, the newest business with Fire Emblem Engage. I'm not super far into it, so I'm only about an hour and some change in. Part of that was because I haven't been feeling well, even though I've had the game since it launched and I was off Friday. I just wasn't feeling great, so I just couldn't get up to play it. But part of it, I think, and this is kind of what I want to talk about, because I've only played the first 3 chapters. They're tutorials, whatever. They're super short. In one case, there's literally 4 enemies. It's nothing. So far, the plot is not, it's 3 chapters in. Whatever. There isn't much of a plot. I haven't really found the characters to be interesting. They seem really, dry, dull, whatever. We have a princeling who's lost his memory. So, standard stuff. And there's something about the delivery of the dialogue that's been kind of weird. I don't know. It just doesn't appeal right out of the gate. Let's put it that way. But again, this is super early. I wanted to talk a little bit about how this game was released, though. And I think this has probably contributed to me having the game literally for a week and not touching it. And that is that the game didn't have a demo on the eShop. This is, since Awakening, the only game that didn't have a demo before launch, I believe, and if I'm wrong, correct me, was Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia, which of course is a remake. I don't think Shadows of Valentia ever had a demo on the eShop, which is kind of weird. But Awakening had a demo before it came out that's progress carried over. I'm pretty sure Fates did as well. Although maybe not, because there were 2 versions of Fates. But I feel like I remember it having one. And 3 houses. And I feel like the demo is kind of actually a good way to get started on a game, because when I have a big JRPG in front of me, unless it's a game I'm super looking forward to, like a Xenoblade, sometimes it's hard to get started on it because you go, oh god, I've got to go through 4 hours of tutorials and just learning mechanics and just kind of working through the grind. And the demo having a discrete length, the demo is what it is. It's 5 hours long or whatever. The demos that lets you continue the progress at least get you through the hump of that. So you have this discrete thing that you're going to play, and there's a finite amount of time. And then when you get to the actual game, you don't have to worry about it. You just get to go right into the progress happening and stuff going on. And that feels like that divide actually makes it more easy to start. I don't know. It's kind of a weird observation I had with this game that I just didn't pick it up and start playing, even though, I've basically not been able to do all that much anyway because I haven't really been able to breathe very well all week. So it's not like I was going out and doing a bunch of fun activities. But yeah, so far I don't know. I'm not feeling it yet. And the look, I don't know. It's still too pastel-y for me. And I know that's superficial, but it just makes it feel off in some way that I'm struggling to describe. You meet the Divine Dragon at the very beginning of the game, the very, very beginning. And it's just she's just an anime mom. She's just an anime mom. That's all she is. It's what? Maybe a little more acting like a divine being. I don't know. Seems a little odd. But again, we'll see. It's early. But yeah, I'll have a lot more to say on it next week now that I've finally kind of committed to getting into it. But we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it finds its footing with me a little bit sooner than soon-ish. Because it's just not quite there yet. Besides that, I played a game that's a mobile port to Switch. I played that last week. This is let me make sure I get the exact right name. I'm not going to talk a lot about this. This is more of just a heads up if you like these kinds of things. Let me get the exact name right. Is it House of? I think it's House of. Yeah, it's a point and click adventure game, escape room style game, called The House of Da Vinci. These are on Steam, they're on mobile, and they're on Switch. There's 3 of them. The third one just came out, which is how it came to my attention. People like these, and yeah, I got through. I bought the first game. They're all $10. They're all about 5 to 6 hours. And they're like point and click adventure games where you have to solve puzzles and like find the thing, put the thing here, do the thing. They've got a pretty good hint system that's time based. So like if you, there's a very finite number of things that you can do at any given moment. Like all the spaces are small, they're self-contained, and they might only have 3 or 4 puzzles that are available to you right now. They may only have 1 puzzle that's available to you right now. So it's very easy for the game to give you context-based hints based on where you are. And it does a good job of that. So I got through the game in about 5 hours. If you are really hankering for one of these, like these sort of retro-style point-and-click adventure, like escape room puzzle games, this is a pretty good one of those. You're going to want to play the first game because they have this really stupid plot where Da Vinci is trying to, like, the actual historical figure is trying to escape from the leadership of the city-state he's in because he's invented some kind of, like, time manipulation device. And rather than just tell you to meet him because he knows you'll solve all the puzzles, he's created the world's most intricate fucking locking system in his house, where I have to go disassemble this scale model of a cathedral puzzle by puzzle just to open the door to get out of his library. It's an incredibly stupid thing, but the puzzles are fine, and I enjoyed it well enough. So if you're looking for one of those, it's $10, it's 5 hours, and if you like it, there's 2 more, so heads up, I guess. But that's all I've got. Greg, you have what might be the new business, depending on how you want to think about it.
Well, yeah, they did finally, as we sort of mentioned it last week, it's been somewhat overdue. They finally put an N64 game on there after a couple of months without one, nearly, and it is Goldeneye. They've gone there, so I think we were all under the impression that this would have happened roughly a year earlier than it did, if it weren't for the Russian invasion of Ukraine, so at some point they've just, because with all the licensing and stuff, they went through quite a few hoops to make this happen, both through NSO expansion pack and through like Game Pass Rare Replay on Microsoft, and then, it couldn't happen, or they felt it shouldn't anyway, when the invasion began. So, yeah, I guess this is another milestone for the people wondering, like, when is it going to be okay to release Advance Wars? Apparently it's okay to release this game that, features kind of iffy post-Soviet Russian kind of conduct, although it's a rogue element in the
right,
in all that kind of thing. So I don't know whether
arguably the rogue element would happen to be the current leadership. So
yeah, I guess at what point do you separate? But evidently they're okay with it at this point. It's a pretty decent sized milestone, I guess, because it's the first time that it's been re-released. It's had seemingly some near misses in the past in terms of, like, there was a certain amount of progress was kind of made, I think, towards maybe doing a simultaneous like XBLA and Virtual Console release back in the kind of late aughts. That did not happen. And then included this, it would have been like fully kind of remastered, I think, with XBLA. And that's been out there, it's been kind of leaked since, everyone's been able to look at what they actually did to the game, which is not really what you're getting here, obviously, especially not through the NSO app, because that's not what it does. It's just, N64 emulation, but even, the version that is, I haven't had the chance. Obviously, I own Rare Replay, but I've not had the chance to kind of check in with that yet to see what the Xbox version is actually like. But seemingly, it's not going to be, kind of a full remaster there. I guess it's just trying to maintain rough parity with what the Nintendo people are getting, except that we actually through Nintendo Online you get some kind of multiplayer. Obviously, it's not like the full kind of multiplayer with its matchmaking and stuff, but it's the online split screen thing that that NSO provides. It's something. Whereas I don't think they even really get that with the Rare Replay version, which is kind of a shame in some ways. But it's a game that helped popularize first-person shooters on consoles. Like it certainly was a big deal. And it's kind of unusual for something that's that kind of important to have this huge gap with not being issued officially. I think it was the third best-selling N64 game after Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64. So, above Ocarina of Time, for instance, and, it was just a really big deal. I played it a hell of a lot. I got the good fortune with the timing and everything to have, lots of, multiplayer sessions with friends, and I spent ages, as I would, with games back then because of the cost of importing and stuff, I just put all the damn time in to do stuff on Double O Agent and all that kind of stuff. So, I know the game well, but I think probably the last time I played any of it for any considerable sort of time would have been also in the late aughts. I don't know whether it was inspired by all that talk that it might be coming back, but I think we talked about it on the show in some capacity round about then. And I played it on my, still on, obviously on original hardware. It wasn't emulating or anything. But even that was a dreadfully long time ago at this point, obviously, probably, 14-ish years. So it will be interesting to put a bit more time in. As we record here, I only just went live, an hour or so ago. But you could, obviously everything is pretty much as you'd expect. I did get sort of a little chuckle out of the whole thing of when they announced that this is it. We're dropping it tomorrow or whatever what the time exactly was. That they sort of said, widescreen. It did. Didn't it have widescreen originally? Because quite a few Rare games did. They actually had that, kind of, even though it was not terribly common at that point for people to have 16:9 ratio televisions in the late 90s.
I think you're right. Yeah, there was an option, and we didn't have a widescreen TV, so we're just like, wait, it just, makes the screen smaller, and so we didn't see the point.
I remember I had a 4:3 TV around that time that was fairly high end, and it had a widescreen mode where it would just letterbox its own content. So if you put a widescreen signal into it, it would somehow know, and it would. But it's like, why? And the N64 was the only time I ever did that, and it ran like trash. So
I think the first time I had a television that was not 4:3 aspect ratio was 99. So, when I had Goldeneye, when it was new, there was no option to actually experience it that way. I more remember it with some of the later games, I'm almost certain Banjo-Tooie had a 16:9 mode, for instance, and stuff. So it's kind of weird. It's just it felt like they were advertising something as new, and it's like, I'm not sure that's new. I think it's because Rare did support things, that a lot of people didn't at that time. I mean, it also had the option to have 2 controllers plugged in, but to use them as essentially one controller, to do, because the N64 only had one control stick, it was allowing you to do dual analog, but with 2 N64 controllers, which, I guess would presumably still work here. But, I was kind of hoping, not particularly because obviously they don't do a lot of like accommodating or anything. This is pretty much just straight up kind of emulation on the expansion pack. But I was kind of a little bit hopeful, like, could they make it so that, if I put it into the 2 controllers mode, like it just maps the right stick to that second control stick, and we could do like dual analog type stuff, but it certainly does not appear to be the case. So I was and of course the game was very much designed around the limitations of the default control scheme with the sort of copious amounts of auto aim and everything. But it's a hell of a thing to get used to just dipping into it now, because you get so used to navigating first-person games with a dual stick mentality that, when it's like, no, I go to touch that right stick, and it does stuff because they've just mapped the C buttons to the right stick. Because not every N64 game does that the same way, actually. Because some games, you have to kind of hold down ZR to kind of like make the C stick just be the same as the C buttons. But other games, they just have that right stick as essentially the C buttons by default. Sin and Punishment is one of those games, and Goldeneye is too. But it doesn't work. It never did work like a second stick because it was, 4 buttons. It was kind of like I guess like a PS, one D-pad almost, kind of thing. So it's like, okay, you could kind of sidestep with it, and you used it to like zoom in or zoom out and stuff, but it just wasn't the same. And it was really designed around moving with that, with the analog stick, because like Turok was not so much. I mean, I think that had options too, but Turok was more, no, you move with the D-pad and you aim with the stick. Whereas Goldeneye was like, no, people want to move with the stick. And as for aiming, well, you could do this kind of stop and, shoot thing with the, you could kind of go behind cover and stop and then aim with the stick with a reticle on screen. But in terms of running and gunning, auto aim will handle that, and it does. Even you can turn it off, I think, in the options, auto aim if you want. But that was kind of the main way that they thought people would play. So trying to like reprogram myself to deal with that is probably going to be a bit of an adventure, I feel like. But and I can't imagine going into the greatest depth with it because it was quite tricky. Like, if you want, but I mean, I guess, you can always go on to the agent difficulty and plus that was the kind of one of the more novel and kind of nuanced elements of it, was not just did you have the selectable difficulties, but they kind of pared down the complexity of missions. It wasn't just like, oh, well, there's more guards and they do more damage. It was actually like different objectives, kind of areas of the level that you didn't really have to bother with on the lower difficulty stuff, which is a little bit awkward because it creates these kind of superfluous zones sometimes. If you played through a level for the first time at a lower difficulty, it's like, what's this whole thing over there? It doesn't really seem to be any point to it. It's like, oh, well, if you're on 00 agent, there's a point to that. But so there's some awkwardness with it. But I felt like that at the time was kind of quite involved, quite advanced for like, okay, let's really make it a somewhat different experience on the different difficulties.
And to be honest, like, I'm gonna poke at this thing through Game Pass, but to me, it's mostly just a curiosity. I played this game to hell and back.
Yeah, so did I. I beat it on 00 Agent, and that was a hellish experience.
Yeah.
It was so difficult. It those. I mean, I'm sure I've spoken about it before. That Moonraker mission, trying to do that on Double O Agent was so difficult. It's a cool bonus, like all the kind of references to that movie, as goofy as it is, extremely goofy as it is.
Oh, God.
But, it's like a whole other movie than the one, that this is primarily, based on. So it was kind of like going above and beyond, and it was just quite a, kind of interesting mission, like how different it was. But it's also ridiculously difficult on Double O, because like those lasers that the enemies have, like they just sap your health so fast.
Oh, yeah. I ended up using the Game Shark to unlock the last bonus because I just couldn't do it. I was just like, screw it. I borrowed a Game Shark from somebody who had one and did it and unlocked all the stuff and saved the game. I'm like, nah, I don't need to deal with this crap anymore. Because the last special unlocks you get, I can't remember which stage is the last one you unlock.
I think the last one is like a mix of different, but like older Bond movies, like. There's like the Golden Gun, but then there's Baron Samedi, and there's the play set of one of the other Roger Moore films. Like it's like they come from one film. But I can't remember specifically.
I just remember I couldn't do it, and I just said, you know what? There's a way around this. They did advertise that you can do the split screen multiplayer online on Switch, which I don't have the N64 expansion pack. If I did, I would be very curious to see how this runs. But of course, I guess you can only do 2-player, right? The N64 doesn't support 4-player online, does it?
Oh, it does. Yeah, it does. I'm sure you could do 4-player with it. It certainly would be interesting, because my experience of doing 2, it can be. It varies, and obviously that can be dependent on local factors as well, they can't ignore, kind of the connection of the people involved can have issues, but, sometimes it's, like fine, and then other times it's a problem. Like, I guess it's just one of those things, because it can't, it's like kind of cheat the way that, if you're playing a modern game, like with Mario Kart 8 or something, it can't like just kind of massage the fact that people are not precisely in sync, because it's kind of layered on top of emulating this old game. It's just like, no, if someone is lagging, the game waits until they stop lagging, and then we pick up again. So that if you do have any issues like that, then you're going to feel the full effect of them. There's nothing to smooth it over at all. So, 2 people, or maybe more than 2, that have like really solid connections, I would assume, it could be perfectly fine. But if not, then it's kind of, if people can remember the good old days of like the way things really and the thing is, some of this is the nature of the game, but like bad Smash Online is similar.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like, no, there's no kind of fudging this. Like, we have to get everybody synced back up, kind of thing. Like, that's the kind of stuttering that you get.
Yeah. Well, it is really just the original game code just running over IP tunneling, right?
I assume so, yeah. I don't imagine
like there isn't
anything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's why on Xbox, I think they did make some changes to it to get it to go to 4K.
Right, yeah.
But that's also why they don't have the online multiplayer, is because they would have effectively just had to write custom code to do that on Xbox, and they weren't going to do it. So
yeah, so probably chances are, I assume they already did that for that version that got shelved.
Yeah, that's an ironic thing, right? Yeah,
and of course, I mean, they would have done it also for the Perfect Dark, kind of remake that did get to come out and was part of Rare Replay as well. So I'm sure it's all like kind of all the elements were in place to do that, but that's just was not really within the scope of this deal, this accommodation to make it possible to come out now.
Yeah. Oh well. I'll be interested to hear if y'all get a game going, how it goes. But
yeah, maybe I'll have a chance at some point to give that a go. I said there's been other stuff like F-Zero, which obviously F-Zero is a super fast game. So it really kind of chafes when that starts stuttering and stuff. But it's is kind of a bit of fun. Hopefully, not something you can do a great deal with. I mean, Perfect Dark's multiplayer was a lot more kind of fun, I thought, because of the amount you could do with the Sims in that, the bots essentially that you can populate a game with, because like one-on-one deathmatch, I don't know, there's only so much you can do with that. Like if you got 2 people, 4 people better. But with Perfect Dark, just the range of weapons and levels and the bots and everything like that went on for ages and ages. That was so much fun. That really did kind of take it to the next level. But obviously it wasn't. I mean, plenty of people played it and enjoyed it, I guess. But like I said, when you compare it to the millions and millions that the Goldeneye did, I think because it was so late, it just kind of came and went, and Halo was the next time that people lost their shit over a console shooter.
Yeah. It and that really took us into a different era of console shooter, because even like I can't remember the name of the games that the group that broke off from Rare made, Time Splitters.
Mm-hmm.
Like that still felt very related, like very in the lineage of Perfect Dark and stuff, where Halo doesn't. It feels like it's a different. It feels like it's more in like the Tribes 2 kind of space, like coming out of the PC world, and so that was, I don't know, like we hit a different era of first person shooters, and then I guess what would the next one be? Call of Duty 4.
Yeah, if you're talking about kind of like milestones, yeah, Call of Duty 4 was big, because while it didn't completely introduce the idea of, XP and all that, it did popularize it.
Yeah, and it wasn't a World War II game, because that was its whole thing. It was modern war.
Yeah.
And it was huge for online. So yeah, I guess it's, at this point you can play all 3 of those milestones on Xbox.
Yeah,
because they remade Call of Duty 4, right? No, they just made a new game called Modern Warfare, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, but they also there's a Modern Warfare remastered.
Okay.
I think there is.
So you can go online and get killed by the same person 10 times in one match.
Yes.
God.
Yeah, there is a Modern Warfare remaster. Yep, I think it was. Wasn't it? It was a pack-in with something else.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Greg, did you want to talk Bay or not?
Well, there's not a great deal to say about it. I did finally start Bayonetta 3, so it's too early really to say terribly much about it. But there was the thing, I think this got patched at some point following the announcement of the prequel game. Was that a Game Awards thing? What was that again?
Yes.
It would have been, probably not that long ago, I guess. They did a patch, and so, originally there was this kind of, glimpse of that game. Not like really ridiculously hidden or anything. Not like the Naboo fighter in Rogue Squadron or something. But you actually had to kind of work to see it. Whereas now, like I could just see it pretty easily. Kind of. And so it's obviously it's not much to that at all. It really is just kind of showing off the aesthetic mostly. You just kind of walk through this environment. You kind of get the feel of what they're going for. This kind of pop-up storybook feel, kind of some kind of shades of Okami, that obviously the Platinum did not do because they didn't exist yet, but they essentially were formed out of people that worked at Clover at the time. And that's the thing, it's weird. It kind of feels like Okami Den, the game with the baby Amaterasu, Chibiterasu, yeah. But, they didn't make that. Like, Clover didn't make that because Clover had gone by then. That was just Capcom's idea of like, what's cuter than, a wolf, a baby wolf? But
God,
I have to say, actually seeing it on, the hardware, it was very striking. It does look really nice. The style and all that, the colours and everything really look great on the screen and everything. But I just can't help but be struck by the inevitability. Like this cannot sell well in any universe, right? Like I'm not sort of not giving anybody credit. Like I could only assume Nintendo, Platinum, whatever, their sort of basis for green lighting this thing was not founded on like, oh yeah, it's going to sell millions and millions. I'm sure it's like a modest target, but I still just feel like it won't meet that, right? Like there's no way. It's not because I think it looks bad or anything like that. It's just like, I don't get
impossible.
This series that's all about over the top, like gore and, kind of, titillating kind of content is gonna sport like a fairy tale prequel that people will like, and you just gave them the main course like a few months ago. Like I can only assume this was like maybe done for a while and they were waiting until after Bayonetta 3 to be able to release it, but I don't know, maybe it would have been better commercially to release it up front before, you kind of do the big one.
I wondered if maybe like it was side content they were originally planning for Bayo 3 and it just spiraled out of yeah, like somebody came in and they're like, this thing's gotten way too big. We like it needs to be its own thing now.
Yeah, that would make more sense than it just kind of happened by accident, because it just doesn't seem like it's the product of, like particularly rigorous planning, because it really, like I said, maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but whatever its actual virtues, that's a whole separate thing. But I
don't know that you can be too pessimistic on the sales of a Bayonetta product. I think there's a no floor pessimism on that.
Yeah, obviously it's always been kind of modest. But, it just seems like, well, when you have a spin-off that's going to kind of, take away a lot of the things that are most associated with the games, by definition, seemingly, I'm not sure, how well it can do. Also, if it is as it sort of appears to be in a way, like somewhat trading off like the Okami spiritual connection, Okami famously not that big of a seller.
Nope.
So that was also, quite some years ago now. And I mean, it's been re-released a bunch of times. So I'm sure it's had the chance to like cumulatively kind of inch up the sales charts a bit. I've bought it multiple times, so it's not like it's like the most obscure thing in the world, but still a bit of an oblique connection and all that. It's just interesting because that, as it stands, like that is like Nintendo's March game.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really seem like. I mean, look, Kirby's in February, which like this is seemingly Kirby's time of the year now. The kind of final quarter of the fiscal year for Nintendo, the first quarter of the calendar year. So, like that'll probably be the one that's expected to do better commercially, and Fire Emblem, of course. Right. It's a significant commercial force these days. I guess we'll see how well it does, considering it is kind of a lot of the coverage of it talks about the fact that it's not as kind of deep on the kind of narrative elements as Three Houses was, and Three Houses was really, really successful. So maybe that will put some fans off, but you would still expect it to do fine, I would have thought.
Yeah, it seems like a more modest offering than Three Houses, which felt like they were really trying to blow the doors off.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I've read of reviews and such, it kind of sounds somewhat appealing to me in the sense that it just kind of seems like this might be a bit more. It seems like in terms of gameplay, like the actual kind of tactical elements might be more robust. But
I got killed in the tutorial level. Now, to be fair, they critted me, which is a fucked up thing to do in the tutorial.
Yeah, to even have it that crits can happen in the tutorial is a kind of a choice, yeah. But again, by definition, they're improbable, but still.
Yeah, and the crit was like one-hit KO. It's like, oh, come on!
Well, like I said, it sounds like that might be more involved, but the fact that the story might be a bit more of a light touch, and you're kind of not going to feel as obliged to kind of invest in the characters and stuff. That to me, in that sense, more casual. Sounds like a bit more inviting to me at the moment. Like the kind of, I've said I'd like to play Three Houses eventually, but it is kind of like I might want to be in the right mood or headspace for that. Whereas
especially if you,
a game that's just like, oh, it's a good tactics game. Like that's more something you can engage with. Oh god, more easily.
We're ruined.
Yes.
I mean, the other thing about Three Houses, though, is if you wanted to get all the perspectives on the story, you had to play the game 4 fucking times.
Yeah, there is that also, which I
insane.
Cannot possibly envision personally, however attached to people I got.
I've done it twice in, 5 years? I've done it twice, and the second time I only did it because I bought the DLC chapter, or the DLC content came out.
Right.
God, 4 runs. Fuck, what the hell were they thinking?
I say it seemed to land with quite a lot of people, quite powerfully.
It did.
And so I do wonder about this, and I do wonder what if the sales of Engage are softer, what lessons they will take from that.
I kind of it's not the same as Echoes in that respect, but Echoes was a much less flashy game than the 2DS or the 2 other 3DS games. It came later, and it was a little bit softer sales numbers.
It was so late. Well, really, really late.
Yeah, so I don't know that they'll read too much into it, but I'm okay with them trying different stuff. Just there's a character that they've shown already that's got gumballs in her hair. It just looks like her hair is. It's just like her hair is full of gum. It's these character designs are out of control. They're just so. I will say, just I know we're completely an aside now. There is now a worse song than the Fire Emblem song at the end of Tokyo Mirage Sessions. We now have a worse Fire Emblem lyrical song. So congratulations to Fire Emblem Engage. God.
The lesson is it can always get worse, James.
The Theo Greyjoy principle. Yeah, you should always remember it.
If you live through 2020, there's no way you didn't already know that.
That's true. Very true.
Like, 2020 was a lesson in it can always get worse. It's like, oh, you thought you were safe. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
I got one more thing to go wrong.
Yeah, you thought you were safe if you stayed inside. Well, we got another thing coming.
God. What a nightmare. Anything else?
Nothing I'll do for this week.
All right. Guillaume, I know you have something that you're very excited to talk about.
Oh, yes. So I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm not, for whatever reason, I'm not ready to dive into a good game.
All right.
So
rude.
I've been playing Blue Dragon for reasons that are not entirely clear to me. It's a game that I bought on the Xbox when it was $5, like a long time ago. And now I feel like this weird...
This is a 360 game.
A 360 game, but it's still available on the current Xboxes. And, I guess it's a title I was curious about, and I think I heard CJ on the Player One podcast mention that recently, like, I like Blue Dragon, and I think that was enough for me. I was just like, maybe I'll play Blue Dragon. Maybe I also like it,
Yeah,
it's very important. Like, it kind of... don't set your expectations up too much, and maybe you'll like it.
This game is almost 20 years old.
Mm-hmm. Developed by Mistwalker, or not developed by them, or I'm not sure what the arrangement is, because the studio that programmed it and probably did a lot of the legwork, whatever you want to call that, the actual kind of programming and anyway, was Artoon.
Yep. So Mistwalker was really like a clearinghouse for Sakaguchi's ideas.
Mhm.
It was kind of, my understanding is it was closer to like Sakurai's company, where they had some resources, but somebody was going to have to come in to do the grunt work.
Okay.
And so that's what Artoon's specialty is.
Yeah. But I'm guessing that ultimately Sakaguchi is responsible, put a stamp on a lot of the decisions that I would be like, what the hell was he thinking? And also, like, the story was his, the characters, and they're not the best story, the best characters that Sakaguchi has ever come up with.
Do we have to explain now to people who Sakaguchi is? Because it's been a while since he was really out there doing stuff.
Well, up to the release of the movie Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, he was directing Final Fantasy titles at Square Enix.
From the beginning.
Or Squaresoft. Sorry.
Squaresoft, yes.
And then, he was put in this corner office, an office in a corner.
Yes.
When the movie flopped, and something about the Japanese not really firing people, but shaming them and not really giving them anything to do instead until they quit.
Yep.
So... Yeah.
Yeah, then he went and founded Mistwalker.
Yeah, but before that, like, he was one of the people responsible for beloved Final Fantasy titles. It's kind of sad how his Square adventure ended. But then Mistwalker, so Blue Dragon was a title that Microsoft... funded, and they wanted, they were trying to court the Japanese market, and so Blue Dragon was one title that they funded, and also they funded another Mistwalker title, Lost Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
But Blue Dragon has art or character designs by Akira Toriyama, who is the Dragon Ball character designer, writer. Author.
Yeah, he wrote the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z mangas, and then I think he's back involved with Super.
Right. He tells someone else to draw for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like his style's that hard to emulate. You only have to learn to draw
he still has
faces.
notes, apparently. I've read a few of the mangas, and
this face looks too distinct. Please make it look less distinct.
Right. So he's kind of like not retired, but definitely kind of making a lot of money off of being able to sell his name, sell his designs, sell his like, he's a big name, right? So
not the first time he'd worked on an RPG there, of course, because he famously worked on the Dragon Quest games,
of course, yes.
And then he worked for Square with Chrono Cross.
Trigger.
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 The
Dream Team.
But I don't think. Right. Yeah. Chrono Trigger, of course, had the involvement of the Dragon Quest guy, Yuji Horii. Am I just throwing names that? Yeah. That's the right name, right?
Yeah, you're
Yuji
right.
Horii.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So Yuji Horii was involved in Chrono Trigger. Great game. Yuji Horii was not involved in Blue Dragon as much as it might look like maybe he was, because, Sakaguchi and Akira Toriyama collaborating on that RPG. And also it is very much designed to be a throwback RPG. In the early 360 era, that meant throwback means like a throwback to basically Dragon Quest titles. Right. It's a very simple game. It's kind of recognizable as a Mistwalker RPG because it does have the kind of the weirdly, like, very minimalist opening menu and like 3-character party. I feel like there's a lot of common elements like that in all the Mistwalker RPGs that I've played. But beyond that, like, so the characters look like they're out of Dragon Ball, so they look like they're Dragon Quest characters. But the combat is very simple. I find myself kind of pressing A through a lot of the menus. Just like the simple fight command will get you through most of the encounters. I find that I don't really have any problems if I just go through, like fight, choose the fight command over and over again, and in between battles, I just heal my party, and then I keep carrying on. I guess like one of the fun twists of the combat system is that, or the leveling up system is that you've got 9 different job classes, and as you level them up through acquiring, SP points, which are different from the experience points. So you level up their experience, their levels, but you also level up the job classes. And as you level up the job classes for each character, they gain skills, which are basically like, okay, like a skill could be like doing white magic level 1, and then like you might upgrade that to white magic level 2, or you might have some other ability that white mages have, like maybe like you recover your MP automatically, things like that. So you've got some skills can be like active things that you do in a battle, like they become a choice in the battle menu, and some skills that you unlock might be passive stuff, like the assassin class, kind of like the ninja class. It's one of the first early passive skills that you can unlock is that your turns are much quicker, or you get like priority. Basically, like you hit before the enemies do. So one of the fun things is that at any time you can basically switch between a character between all the job classes that they've unlocked, but you can also, you have like a 3 slots where you can slot in skills from any job that you've unlocked so far. So if you want to give the ninja like quick hits to a white mage character, you can do that. If you want to give them, if you want your brawler to hit with magic attacks, but like doesn't have a whole lot of MP, you can give it the recover MP automatically thing that you unlocked as the white mage, stuff like that. So there's like lots of mixing and matching. It goes beyond something we've seen like in Bravely Default, right? Because in Bravely Default, I think you could bring just the one skill. Here, right, like you start with 3 slots and that's the minimum. And if you go pursue the generalist job class, very quickly you end up with like 6, 7, 8 skill slots. So there's a lot of customization that you can do like that. But of course, as I mentioned, at least early in the game, that's not really necessary. You're very overpowered compared to the enemies. There's not a whole lot of complexity. Or like the complexity would be unnecessary when you can get through most enemy encounters by just choosing to fight. And so like I started playing that, and I guess, it's fine. As I said, I kind of like it. And I don't know what's wrong with me currently, where like I just need like comforting, not too challenging games. But I guess I just need my comforting, not too challenging games. So that's why I've been like already pinball has been that for me for the past few weeks. And now that I'm digging into like a long game, I'm picking this game, which is definitely another kind of comforting, don't have to think about it too much kind of game. So I don't know. I guess I'm just like waiting for the next thing to actually challenge me or to excite me. But right now, I feel like this game is not great. It's not terrible either, and I kind of feel like that's what I want right now.
You want mediocre, is what you want.
I guess. There was this one time when I was like, I told my brother is much older than me, but like he had moved out of the house, my parents, but like I anyway, like I saw him at some point and I was like, hey, do you want to see this hot new movie, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or whatever? And he was like, nah, I don't feel like I have to like watching a movie that I'll have to like right now. And I guess that's kind of like the feeling that I'm feeling right now. I don't really want to play a game that I feel like I'm gonna have to really invest myself in, that I'm kind of I'm gonna have to give it an actual shot or to, I don't know.
That's
you
kind
want
of what I was talking about with the three houses versus engage with Fire Emblem. Like, you know, kind of the nature of three houses kind of seems like you need more of that emotional buy-in that, you know, I haven't had a lot of that to go around for the last several years. So yeah, I get it absolutely. I mean, I've done a lot of that with TV shows, movies. It's you're like, well, I could watch this, but I'm pretty much just gonna, you know, it's not really gonna sink in. So you're kind of wasting it, you know, you're kind of burning it when, you know, so that could certainly be the case with games too.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what I talked about with Engage earlier in the show, where it's like, why I didn't start the game even though I had a whole damn day off. I sometimes you just want to lay on the couch, watch like reruns of shit like 911 Lone Star, and watch Rob Lowe scream about a volcano erupting in the middle of Austin, Texas.
These are
what
facts.
you need. Sometimes you need that. You need stupid, or you need like droll, or oh look, this Law and Order I've seen 48 times is on. I'm just gonna turn my brain off for the next 40 minutes.
Yeah, like I have access currently to HBO shows and to, you know, I don't know, French Canadian TV, but I what I've been doing is watching bad movies on 2B TV.
Oh God.
Yeah, I know. So it's the Lawnmower Man 1 and 2. Has been something that I went back to.
So
recently.
about Brosnan this week, he's dominating.
I guess.
Also, I mean, like this was actually before the show, but Guillaume mentioned to me something about Black Adam, and isn't he in that as well?
Also,
yeah, he is.
Oh my God, he's just all of a sudden he's like Kevin Bacon.
He's back, baby.
He's just at the nexus of everything.
Maybe I unconsciously seeked his whatever he's been in. He's got more stuff on Tubi. Like he's got some sort of vampire, like urban vampire movie thing, like from before. I'll look it up and I'll send you the link.
If you find yourself like getting ready to watch Mamma Mia, you can call one of us. We'll talk you down.
Yeah, surely, like, I don't know, Thomas Crown Affair remake, Taylor Panama something before you go to ABBA musical.
Thomas Crown Affair was really good with him.
Look, I had the Thomas Crown Affair on DVD because I got it for free when I bought a DVD player. And I watched it more times than I would have thought.
Like,
Look, the director's commentary was replete with incredible information. You know, like McTiernan just explaining that he got the idea for the heist because of, you know, when they were shooting Predator in the jungle, they realized that they couldn't actually use heat cameras because the jungle was too fucking hot.
Yeah.
the cameras wouldn't work. The IR wouldn't work.
Go figure.
Yeah. So you know, I don't know. That was enjoyable.
Oh my God.
Anyway, all this to say that 2B does have both the original and the remake of the Thomas Crown Affair. So
let's say the original and the remake of Lawnmower Man. I was like, the remake Lawnmower Man.
It's ripe for a remake. You know it is.
Yeah, it was a 1949 starring Cary Grant. Yeah. Yep.
That movie had at least two adaptations on CD-ROM, like two games, quote unquote, where you had to press a key in time, like basically a Dragon's Lair, but
like interactive software rather than a game.
Yeah. So it got adaptations and remakes and stuff like that.
It was a pretty Super Nintendo game, wasn't it? It had. I've heard music from it that sounded pretty good. It sounded very much like it was made by someone from Europe that probably worked on like Commodore 64 games. But
right.
it sounded
Chris
good.
Hülsbeck or something.
I think it's Alistair Brimble is the name of the chap that did it. But yeah, I don't really know his resume, but I can only assume he's part of that. So, yeah, because they just have this distinctive sound, like the percussion. It was just the style that was common on PC. It's just funny when you hear like the Super Nintendo sound font or style, you know, like, I mean, Super Nintendo use samples, you know, but you can usually tell that it's a Super Nintendo game, but it's, this is a Super Nintendo game, but also sounds like a computer game at the same time. Like Vortex is one of those as well. If you know that was a third-party FX chip game. There were many of those, but there were some, and
it was wildly economically irresponsible.
Yeah, exactly. When you're not like getting the Nintendo deal on, you know, making the cartridge, like that I can only imagine they retailed for quite a lot, to buy. But that's another one where it's like this is the synthesis of a Super Nintendo and a computer game in soundtrack form.
Well, Gil, if you need content, I'm sure some streaming service has Remington Steele on it. There's like 100 episodes of that.
That was basically, he was like in the frame to be Bond when Dalton got it because of that series.
Right.
But it just fell through. And then, Dalton was Bond for a couple of movies and the wheel turned, and then it was like almost 10 years later that he got Goldeneye.
So it's out there for you. So it might be on Prime Video.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I don't know what that
probably not
in
Canada, but I guess we'll see. So Blue Dragon.
Blue Dragon starring Pierce Brosnan.
You can't tell it's Pierce Brosnan because it's the Dragon Quest style of Pierce Brosnan, but just have to trust us on this one.
So it's all right. I feel like if I had a new Dragon Quest to play, I would be playing that instead. But this will do in the meantime, I suppose. It's just not as charming as the Dragon Quest is, unfortunately, and it does have they made a few baffling decisions. Like there are a lot of chests throughout the world and throughout the dungeons that you can open and find items in. You know, that's standard RPG stuff. Also, like in towns, there's not a whole lot of towns. When there are towns, you can like press A in front of a pot, and maybe sometimes there's something in there, sometimes there's not. But so the weird decision here is that literally any item in the world, any object in the world could be hiding a potentially useful item. You know, like I call them, I've taken to calling them doodads because of the StarCraft map editor. Like basically like every like little outcropping, every tree, every like object that you would populate a game world with. You can press A in front of it, and your character will investigate it, and then sometimes they don't find anything, and sometimes they find a lot of money, or a potion or whatever it is. And of course, you're not forced to look at every single thing, every decor element in the world, but it's kind of to your advantage to do it. So I don't know. Like it's really weird because you kind of feel forced to, but then, like it just slows the pacing to a crawl. So I'm trying to not do that, but sometimes it's just too, like the rock is right there. Might as well just be mashing A as I'm running past it, and then like probably my character will step in front of it and look at it and maybe find something, but might not also. But it's just like you would think that like a veteran like Sakaguchi would have been like, "Hey, this is a terrible fucking idea, isn't it?" And would have refrained from doing that.
Nah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he'd been out of the game for a while too, though. I mean, effectively. So,
I suppose so. There were a lot. Now that I think about it, there were a lot of weird. Hey, pick up random items and shit. What was the Wii game that Miss Stalker made?
Oh,
Last Story.
Last Story.
Right. Yeah. Except in that game, it was like literally you have to aim at a scintillating, like a dot, like a bright spot
Yes.
in the world, and then like you would get something.
I kind of wish that game was around now in some way or another.
Yeah.
But like it really isn't. Like it's if you have a physical copy, you can play it. But that's it. Like it would be really cool if that game were around somehow.
It wasn't even on Wii U as a digital purchase Wii game, which is kind of strange, because I mean there's some things on there that were a bit more off the beaten path, like the Fatal Frame remake in Europe, for instance.
But also, would that the Pandora's Tower?
Yeah,
that's a thing, right?
That made it as a digital game there, but cause it just in terms of like there being other stakeholders in the IP or something, like Fatal Frame,
right.
Like Nintendo are invested in that, but they don't own it outright or something. Like it kind of strikes me as being maybe a little bit similar to whatever arrangement they had with Sakaguchi for the last story, but nope. I get maybe it's just something about the language of the original deal that made it unusually difficult to just extend it to some digital re-release, just more trouble than it's worth. I really don't know, because otherwise why would, I mean, that's not that available at this point because it's on Wii U and the shop's about to go away and nobody had Wii U's and all that, but that would have been something.
Right.
Yeah, it's just they don't even talk about it. Is it even referenced in Smash? In all the stamps?
God,
I don't even know.
The spirits, maybe this, or maybe there was something in a previous game. That's a really good question.
Like Xenoblade X is sort of the low bar mark for like references in Smash. It gets a very, like, I think there's like a spirit.
Yeah, there's not much, is there, compared to obviously like Xenoblade. The other Xenoblades have like actual characters and stages and songs, so much.
Xenoblade X, I think, has one spirit more in terms of representation than Xenoblade 3, a game that came out 2 years after they stopped adding content to Smash Brothers. Yeah, the other game that they did for Microsoft. I know you said that wasn't Infinite on Discovery. That was the other game that Microsoft funded.
Lost Odyssey.
Lost Odyssey, yeah.
So
Microsoft went through that weird phase where they funded a bunch of JRPGs that they deliberately wanted to be retro stylish, because I guess they were just trying to establish that those kinds of games could live on their platform. I played one of them and reviewed it when it was ported to Switch, and its name is escaping me.
Oh, is this the one you were in the middle of when something happened? Yeah,
the Xbox
Last
killer.
Remnant.
Last Remnant. That's right.
Last comes up a lot in these.
There's a lot of Last, Lost, yeah.
Yeah, they just went through this period where they were like, well, we need to get these on our system. Because, of course, the original Xbox didn't really have any of them.
No, obviously there was a little bit of an attempt to market it, the original Xbox in Japan, that went nowhere. So then, when the next system came around, it's like, oh, we'll make an effort this time. We'll hit them where they live, with JRPGs.
And that was why the 360 was a huge success in Japan.
Yeah, didn't quite happen, funnily enough. But I guess, they do get. Could be given more points for actually trying, and actually, doing things with, some high profile kind of creatives that had, kind of that money in the bank with the Japanese sort of, gamer fan base, but it just wasn't gonna, it was getting more after the PS2, which obviously 360 was, it was starting to get harder to sell regular consoles. Like handhelds were just really starting to take over, and obviously the Wii had a good measure of success, but that was pretty much it. Like that was pretty much the party was over after that, in terms of thinking that any dedicated solely TV based console could do massive numbers in Japan anymore. The Wii was the end of that, and especially trying to come in from the outset, from a sort of upstart position that Microsoft would have been compared to Sony and Nintendo had already had big successes in that area. It was extraordinarily difficult, but, as we've said many times, Microsoft's quite willing to throw money at things that are seemingly very improbable in their chance of success because they can afford to. Although they can't afford to keep all of their people employed anymore, but so you can still question whether it's worthwhile, but there you go.
If only they had kept the MSX going for 20 years, they could have entered the Japanese market as a established player. Yeah. So, you think you're going to play this thing all the way through, or are you just kind of like a passing fancy?
Well, I'm already 12 hours into this, so I can't stop now, right? Because those 12 hours would...
Sounds like a blood pact to me.
There was, I feel like long ago there was someone on the show that warned us against this kind of thinking, but I can't remember who it was.
If you stop now, the Blue Dragon from Blue Dragon
the
will
thing
come
is,
to your
like,
house.
I'm it's fine. I'm enjoying it. All right. Like, but the, 12 hours into what is apparently a 40, 50 hour RPG. So, yeah, like I'm not going to say I'm going to finish it, but so from what I've seen from the reviews, and the reviews haven't lied to me, it is kind of Dragon Quest-like, except not as charming and not as good. Thanks, reviews. They do say that like about like 15 hours into it, like it kind of picks up a little bit more. The combat might get a little bit more involved, and the story also. It's kind of weird how it kind of goes nowhere initially, but we might get to the point where they're like, oh yeah, shit, I wrote something about this, I should put it in the game. So we'll see. And if that part of the game is not satisfying to me, then yeah, I'll probably drop it. But if it gets engaging somehow, yeah, who knows?
There's that word again.
I always love games like that, though, where, I'm sure a proponent of the game would say, after 15 hours, it really picks up.
Oh, I mean, I'm the guiltiest person on this show of that.
Isn't like FF13 like the ultimate example of that?
Yeah, it's like after you've played 65% of the game.
Again, yeah. So maybe I've been in this weird mood for longer than I think, now that I think about it.
At least 12 hours, from the sounds of it.
If only there was a way that we could quantify it.
Yeah.
Good Lord. All right. John, speaking of, I'm in this weird mood to play a game.
See, it's really unusual list.
What a
segue. What have you been playing?
What have I been playing? I've been playing Monster Hunter Rise on PlayStation 5.
Well, at least there you go. There's the part that's a little different.
Okay. Yeah,
you did it.
Yeah. It's good. I'm liking it a lot. I mean, obviously, it's unchanged from the Switch version of the game. Really, the pull here is, well, number one, you're on a better set of netcode that doesn't fail when you try to send a join request 3/4 of the time.
All right, it's already worse.
Yeah. But, so, the main draw with this is, of course, the visual, I wouldn't call them upgrades, but the visual options that you have, you on PS5 and also on Series X, you have 3 kind of default modes. You can play, you have the frame rate mode, which effectively makes your PS5 game look like a Switch game. It tones down, all of the graphical elements, and one of the things that's unique about this game amongst console games is that it almost has kind of PC style, a full kind of suite of graphics, visual settings that you can play with. Shadows and kind of loading and high resolution textures and all of that kind of jazz. Really, really like a whole bunch of options that you can fool around with. So it comes with the frame rate mode, a default mode, which is sort of the middle of the road settings, and then a graphics mode. And I chose the default mode. That's, I watched a few videos on YouTube and they recommended the default mode and maybe turn on dynamic shadows, which actually sets it to a custom mode. Like when you change something, it automatically just sets it to a custom mode. But yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to sit there. I'm not really a graphics experimenter. I'm not going to sit there and play around with the graphics. It's just I'd rather play the game. Thank you. just give me a pretty good set of recommended settings, and I'm off and running. But there definitely is a big difference because the frame rate mode, while it's really, really smooth, I think it's probably 120 frames per second. So it's extremely smooth. I mean, so is the default mode. I mean, default mode, I think, is locked 60 frames, so it's really, really smooth as well. Some of this stuff, it strays into the academic territory, where it's, playing the game, you're not really going to see much of a difference. But frame rate mode, it doesn't use the high-res textures, and when you start playing on default, so I went from frame rate to default, and it does use the high-res textures, you can see a real difference just in the little things. Like, of course, everything looks sharper. The draw distance is, of course, really, really, really good across any of the levels. But really, the textures is the big thing. There's a lot more detail on armor. All the monsters look really good. They're really, really detailed. So it really does make the game kind of pop off the screen a lot more than it does on Switch. On Switch, obviously, like I just for kicks, when I hopped on there, James, I walked around a little bit just before the show. I actually downloaded Goldeneye, and so I already had Monster Hunter Rise up and running because I just put my console into sleep mode, and so I ran around a little bit. And I mean, the 30 frames per second is really jarring when you come back from 60 frames per second, and a lot of the textures look really muddy. Not that it's a bad looking game. I mean, for a Switch game, Monster Hunter Rise looks really good, but when coming back from the PS5, it's pretty crazy. But yeah. So, and I mean, and of course, it has kind of the controller, the special vibrations, which are always nice on the DualSense controller. What they do with that. They don't really do anything too out of the box, but that stuff, it's always, I'm used to playing on Xbox, used to playing on Switch, so it's always kind of a novelty when I come over and I use the PS5 controller just because of what they do with all the haptic vibrations, which are usually pretty cool. And the sound is really good. They use the 3D audio. So I actually I picked up the Pulse headset that's on the way, so I'll be curious to see what their what their spatial audio is like, because they tout that as like, oh yeah, these headphones have 3D spatial audio, whatever they call it, the Pulse audio or something. So I'll be curious to see what that's like. But I mean, even in my surround system, the sound is definitely better than on Switch because, there's a lot more like sounds coming out of the satellite speakers for sure. So,
right.
But yeah, overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. I would say honestly, the biggest difference gameplay wise, or the biggest improvement, is in the load times. The load times are near instant. So when you're playing on the Switch and you click yes to depart for a quest, you have a few seconds, the load screen comes up. I haven't actually timed it, but it's probably maybe around 3 to 5 seconds. On PS5, you can't even count to 1, actually, before you're sitting at the start of the quest. So you click depart, 1, quest, you're there. And you don't realize how much time you actually spend looking at load screens on the Switch version until you don't have those load screens anymore. And then you can just start churning through quests because you get your whole routine down, you get your item loadout, you go refresh that, pick the next quest and go, and you just start just running through quests. I mean, it's also helped me that I put so much time into the Switch game where I know exactly what I'm doing, so like I've been able to, cover a lot more ground than I did originally in the Switch version because I didn't really know exactly what I was doing entirely. Whereas in the PS5 version, I know exactly what to do. It's just kind of, I can just roll through it like clockwork. I know exactly what to set up. Whereas like, all my Palicos and Palamutes, all my buddies and all that kind of stuff, I didn't even bother with that or learn those systems until later on in the game. Whereas on the PS5, I'm like, okay, I'm going to roll in. I know exactly what to do. I have to get all my buddies training. So I bought them all out, put them all in the buddy, dojo, and got that going. And, same thing with like, crafting armor, crafting weapons and all that stuff. I'm just like all over that every time. I'm just like surgical with it. So, it's kind of more fun that way. And I've jumped on things like, taking photographs of all the monsters so I can get all of those different achievements and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's been fun. It's certainly been fun. It's the one thing though is that of course you can't take it with you right? Like that's the
Right.
one thing with the Switch that's so great is that you can take that game, on the go. And really with PS5, of course there's no cross save. We talked a little bit about that before the show. There's no cross save. So, I'm starting over from scratch, which has been a very weird experience. Sunbreak, the expansion, actually hasn't been released yet. That's coming in the spring, which I'm assuming that means probably April or something like that. So that's not out yet. So you are starting off with the base game, which is weird.
Without the boosts they give you in Sunbreak to get started, right?
Exactly. You do get the Guild Cross armor, which, if I recall, was the armor that they gave out near the end of the base game before Sunbreak release to kind of help you get through the rest of the base game. So you do get that, but that's pretty early, and you eclipse that with regular armor pretty quickly. So, but yeah. I mean, you start off with nothing. I mean, you have to go through all the tutorials and all that jazz. So,
I wonder why they. I guess because they want to make double sales. So if they put them both on sale at the same time, it'd be.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Why didn't they just release?
This is a full price game, right?
Yeah, it's a full price game. I think I paid $40 for it. So, but yeah. I thought that was kind of weird that they didn't just include Sunbreak or have like a Game of the Year edition or a complete edition or something like that. But I mean, probably
they want both sales.
Yeah, they want both sales, and there's no reason why they can't do that. So,
and they might have some deal about the exclusivity time for Sunbreak too, for all we know.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
Yeah.
So why PS5 instead of the Xbox?
I just know people that I can play with on PS5. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool. Like that's kind of where I started, the platform where I started playing it to begin with. So there's a little bit of a nostalgia factor there.
Okay. I was really hoping you were going to say the 3D audio because that would give me something to make fun of you about.
No, heck no. Yeah, and it's funny. I watched kind of a visual breakdown of the two games, and I guess between the Xbox Series X version and the PS5 version, unsurprisingly, Capcom's engine, the RE engine, runs better on PlayStation hardware than it does on Microsoft's hardware, which doesn't surprise me at all. They're very close, but right at the very, very top, and this is actually like testing with the prioritized graphics mode, which I think actually it bumps it up to some crazy resolution. It's like 120 frames per second with some 4,586 by something resolution.
Oh God!
Yeah, it basically blows out the graphics, right? So, the Series X, you get more dips in frame rates than you do on PS5. So, and they attributed that to just pretty much just Capcom's engine just working better. It's like, go figure. A Japanese game company, their engine works better with Japanese hardware from a Japanese company. Unsurprising, just because probably the development, it's probably a big difference between them being able to just walk down the road and talk to Sony engineers rather than having to deal with Microsoft engineers in Washington, trying to optimize that stuff.
Isn't all the SCE stuff in California now?
Yeah, I guess, but Capcom isn't though.
No,
yeah.
But Sony is.
Yeah, but I mean, wouldn't they have engineers back in Japan though?
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I guess that's the way it is with other games too, like Resident Evil. It runs a little bit better on PlayStation hardware as well. So, yeah, it's kind of the way it is. So, yeah. So I mean, if you want to play it in hi-fi, I guess you could say, yeah, PS5 the game looks really good. I mean, it's Monster Hunter Rise all over again. So if you like Monster Hunter Rise, you're gonna like that, and it just looks a lot better than it does on Switch. So,
all right,
yeah. Also, just quickly, just because I did download GoldenEye 007, I actually dipped into the games that come up. I hadn't played the Nintendo 64 online app for a while, so Waverace 64 came up, and so I fooled around with that a little bit. And that game still holds up. That game really feels good. The graphics, of course, are laughable at this point. But that game, it just feels really good. It really, although I think with the normal controller, I have to try. I keep forgetting that I actually have the N64 Switch controller because I really need to try these games with that controller. But yeah, Waverace 64, it just feels really nice. Just a really fun game. You want to talk about a game where you can just sit back and relax and not think? It's Waverace 64.
Yeah, the physics are still, like I said, that's really what the feel, why it feels still kind of satisfying is because they are surprisingly still seem quite good. Considering obviously, it's pretty primitive now, and obviously the waves themselves look pretty angular.
Yeah,
in terms of how it all feels with and also kind of a nice touch that I've got with the Japanese app. They've got the Rumble version on there because they essentially just reissued it with Rumble support. And that's actually pretty nice with the Joy-Con. If you go through it's kind of silly that they couldn't do, but I guess there wasn't actually a North American ROM that had Rumble support, so it isn't on the kind of Western versions of the NSO app. But it's Mario 64 is the same way. But of course, if you've got Mario 3D All Stars when they deign to sell it to us. That I think it had Rumble that way. Anyway,
it did.
But it was kind of it's one of the more kind of interesting uses of the Rumble there because it's kind of it's not like stuff blowing up or something. It's kind of meant to be kind of relatively subtle, and it kind of works as interpreted through today's Rumble.
I mean, we know Wave Race felt good even beyond its time because, I mean, effectively, isn't Blue Storm just the 64 game with new graphics, more or less?
It's got a turbo function, but I mean, it's pretty close. And I'm sure the physics got, tuned or, and like you said, the graphics are rather different, but yeah, it's very much like that's the skeleton of the game, and you just, add some stuff around it, but, and not that much stuff either, because it's a launch game. It was like, get this thing out. Especially because, I mean, they really didn't have a lot for launch at all. With the GameCube, it was tough. Obviously it's been longer now that I've had since I played Blue Storm, but I think it feels pretty similar, apart from the turbo stuff.
They should re-release Blue Storm. There it is. That's the game that we're all waiting for. That's the GameCube game everyone wants.
This whole GameCube game stuff, it's probably not on the tip of everyone's tongue. It's one man. Because again, you had a game that was fundamentally the same in many regards that has been re-released many times. But still, it's kind of, kind of nice for people to see it if they never did bother with it.
The water looks really good. It still looks good.
It did back then anyway, I've not seen it in a while.
I would laugh if we got a GameCube service and one of the first games was Wave Race Blue Storm.
It almost certainly would.
It'd be so fucking funny.
It almost certainly would be, given that it was a launch title, and like I said, they're always gonna, if they did the same model of okay, we have a kind of an initial offering, and then we, kind of drip more out for it. You'd have some big hitters in that initial feed, but you wouldn't have them all. And so you kind of pad it out with some other stuff, and launch titles is kind of pretty much the exact kind of thing you'd go with.
Well, so many of the GameCube big hitters though have been remade too.
That's true.
So
that's the thing about GameCube is a few stragglers, that really have not got any kind of a look since, but quite a few have been remade or been sequelized, or I guess with Luigi's Mansion it's both. In that it did get a 3DS remake eventually, kind of late, but it's also had 2 and 3 on 3DS and Switch respectively.
It got a 3DS remake built on the bones of the sequel it got, which is even weirder.
Yeah, but it was Grezzo that did it, right? So it was that's their lot in life, is to remake games.
Weird 3DS games.
Previous generations of console hardware.
I would I don't know what you would put on, like, for, I guess you'd have to put Luigi's Mansion on there because it's the launch game. Which,
Yeah.
It's another one.
Which I can't, it's still so weird they launched a console with Luigi's Mansion.
It's the
Luigi's,
thing about you go
finest
to war,
moment.
you go to war with the army you have, not the one you want. I mean,
right.
it's very much that.
With the 3-hour army you have.
With the plumber you have, not the plumber you want.
Well, you know what? You're right, because the plumber they wanted was Mario, and he's not really in that.
I
I mean,
game.
where does the plumber that we deserve fit into all this? I think we need to check with Christopher Nolan and his writers about that. Is that Waluigi? Is that the one we deserve?
Nintendo has kept Waluigi in containment.
Yeah, the plumber we deserve is probably Captain Lou Albano.
Oh God!
God rest his soul.
Rest in peace, Captain.
Yeah. All right. That's all I got.
All right. Well, that was a new business segment. When we come back, we're going to do a very paltry amount of listener mail. So stay tuned. We return to your ears with listener mail. Emails. You send them. We read them. We may use them on the show. We may answer them. We may not. We may attempt to shoehorn a conversation we were having before the episode into your email hastily, which is how we ended up with Yellowstone plus Rabbids, and somehow didn't manage to just say Rayman plus Rabbids, which an emailer correctly noted we absolutely whiffed on. The crossover that Ubisoft will never allow to happen. But your emails come to us when you send them to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. If you send them to other email addresses, they will probably not get to us. Maybe somebody will forward them. I don't know. But if you want to guarantee, mostly, unless it looks like spam, that we will receive your question, you can send it to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. I know that you kids don't send emails or whatever. You use your Snapchats. We're not on Snapchat. We're all old. Does kids even use Snapchat anymore? I don't know. You can't TikTok us. I'm sorry. So you could tweet at us, I guess. Again, the joke
I
about
don't want anybody to TikTok me.
is that even a verb? Is there like can you even at somebody on that platform? I don't even know.
I think you can be TikToked. I'm sure.
I think you could be tagged. I don't think there's like a.
I don't know.
What are we doing?
But I don't want to be TikToked.
We're too old.
Either way, I actually am. I am on TikTok, but I don't even.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Have you posted anything?
No, dude.
Okay.
Nobody wants to see a video of this right here.
to
just be totally honest here. No one wants to see a video of this.
I had to ask because if the answer was yes, I was going to have this excised from the episode. So, okay, that's fine then. All right, so send us your questions, your comments, your thoughts, your social media verbs that we can then try to understand. Remember, we're old, so you kind of type slow so we can follow along. But I'm going to read the first and maybe the only, we'll find out depending on how long it takes for us to answer, email this week. And it is from Sean, who writes, "Hello, RFN. Let's cut to the chase. Why start now? Can a comedic video game like Human Fall Flat, Untitled Goose Game, What the Dub, etc., ever get a widely accepted perfect score? Example, a top 20 of Metacritic. Or is it doomed to fall into the similar bucket comedic movies find themselves come award season? Can it get there without compromising on its comedy to have a deeper, more serious-toned message at the end? I.e., playing in a funny dream world only to find out the end you're a kid pretending to escape from the fact that your family member is dying of some horrible disease. Maybe the disease turned out to be bonitis. Thanks for the podcast." Let me make that
cast
for the podcast.
The podcast.
I choose to believe that this is on purpose.
I mean, given the context of the email, it might be.
This is an insult.
Can a game that is aspiring only to comedy, but a lot of the games he mentioned have kind of like one joke and they're riffing on it, which isn't a bad thing. But like, you know, they're simple. They're mechanically fairly simple games. that are being used to be silly. Can those games get a widely received perfect ratings? Which isn't to say there's a lot of games that do that anyway. Like, that's a fairly rare feat. The list is usually, I don't know, maybe a game a year, if that.
Yeah,
maybe less.
I think there's more room for it in video games than there is in movies. Like, it could happen. Like, a game could play so well and be so funny that, yes, it could get, game of the year or something like that.
I would agree. I would say that the games he listed, though, are probably not they're not aspiring to be mechanically complex enough and to have enough depth that I think someone would give them a 10.
Right. Is What the Dub like kind of a make your own movie quotes kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a toy more than anything.
Right. So basically, can an improv show win an Oscar? And the answer is no.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
But the real question is, can somebody make a AAA open world game that's funny enough to win Game of the Year? That's really what it is, because that's really all the games that win Game of the Year at this point.
Aside
from like Hades.
Given.
It's like what's the next Sony open world game that's going to win Game of the Year next year? Let us know, guys.
Oh, so we just gotta go look at their release schedule.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Go ahead.
What
is it? Last of Us Part 3 or something? I don't know. Whatever. Like, can video games make you cry? I don't know, man.
Sometimes.
Yeah. They definitely can on this podcast for sure.
Oh my god. So putting aside the current issues going on with the studio's founder and the lead voice actor, like a game like High on Life, it's getting good reviews. I don't know if it's getting Game of the Year kind of, but like it is a game that is aspiring to be funny while also making jokes about the format they're in. Like there's one that's gone around where if you essentially do some really weird jumping on the level architecture to bypass a section of the level, it's a game about your gun and it talks. The gun goes, "Oh, look at this guy! He's speed running. Oh, he's trying to cut out parts of the level. I hope you get a good time."
Yeah, and then there's the other part where there's some very pedestrian area of the game, and it's like, "Oh yeah, this is a pretty boring design here. You better talk to Kotaku and send them, just make sure they know this is a pretty boring level design." So it's pretty funny. So pretty funny self-parody stuff in there.
If you just don't fight some enemies, like they'll yell at you, "You're not supposed to lead. It's a game. You're supposed to fight." What?
Yeah.
Oh man, what do we do? You just hear him off in the distance.
Yeah.
Like,
it's pretty much a video game version of Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Really.
But like that's a game that fundamentally plays well.
Mm-hmm.
And then just has comedy writing on top of it. It's not necessarily like a comedy game, if that makes sense. It's like that weird distinction of like the mechanics are like the games. So to go back to his examples, Human Fall Flat is just a game where literally, it's crash test dummies essentially. You're just watching these things get pulverized.
Mm-hmm.
It's What was the name of the film festival episode? In The Simpsons, old man gets hit in the what's the name of the damn it, where Mole Man just gets hit in the junk, and that was the
I can't remember what the episode was called.
No, but the name for the movie.
Oh, what Monty Burns movie where it's like that's the only. Yeah, this old man getting hit by football.
That's it. That's
but like the Burns movie where he's like, I forget. It's just that where he's like meant to be God, essentially.
Yeah. Like this is the equivalent of old man hit by football getting the award at a film festival, which it almost does because people are Homer's in tears. But Goose Game mechanically is really, really simple. It's a puzzle game. So it's got more to it than just the comedy of its gameplay, but like the scenario is everything. And of course, What the Dub, like you said, it's really more of a tool. We're going to put a bunch of clips in front of you and you're going to overdub them yourself. You know, I could see something like a Jackbox game maybe hitting high nines universally. Like if they put one out that like everything on it was an absolute killer. And to be clear, with the Jackbox games, that's not the way they are. There's usually like one new game that's really good, one that's okay, one that's new, like a revisit from a previous game, and like if they put out one that was like 4 absolute fucking killers, I could see it.
Yeah, but I mean that's like saying Mario Party is going to win Game of the Year, and that just won't happen just because of those games being perceived, like we just said, like they're kind of perceived as toys or more interactive event type games rather than games.
Well, and those games have the extra challenge of if you're not playing. So like one of the most horrible things that's happened is the remote team builder, and like we'll play Jackbox, and I'm like fuck, because like you can't do that because you can't be funny when you're dealing with people you work with.
Yeah.
So like if you're playing Jackbox with people who aren't funny, it's torture.
Yes, it is.
Or where even worse, where you can't be funny. So you're sitting on a really funny thing you want to do, but you can't because it's like, well, I can't do that. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that so let's divide it up though. So like the Game of the Year stuff, there does seem to have to be like this faux gravitas to the game in order for it to be considered. Like it needs to feel like this game is important. Whatever that means, and it doesn't mean anything. So,
it pushes things forward somehow.
It broke new ground,
and I think there is kind of a bias in that to video games. In order to be accepted as a medium, have to deal with these serious themes. There really is almost like a game that would be considered a comedic game would be like a step backwards that will never get recognized. Just because the kind of like. The critics will look down their nose at it. But the thing is, the critics are the industry. So like it
yeah.
Like I think there is.
But I mean Fortnite's never going to win Game of the Year. It's quite a comedic game. But I mean that game's never going to because it's too popular, right? Like that thing is that it will never be a critical darling. Because that's the thing. It's just like in movies.
Well,
kind of. So, I mean, I feel like I've talked myself out of my own argument, maybe.
Yeah, you kind of have.
I don't know.
But I mean, Fortnite won a bunch of stuff over the years.
They create categories so that it can win stuff. Actually.
It's very true. Yeah,
because it's not a new game, but it
Best
does
game
like
starring
games as
Jonesy.
a service.
But best continuing game.
Best game with stupid dances that kids do in TikTok videos. Oh, it's Fortnite for the 5th year running. Wow.
Right.
I'm just a grumpy old man in this segment. I apologize.
Because games as a service, like they don't know how to handle them, so it's kind of a new thing, right? Like, I guess if these were the Emmys, like you could just give it to like the current season or whatever,
right.
of Fortnite, but. Actually, that would solve a lot of things. I don't know why they don't do that.
We should move to annualized awards for games, and like you could, I had a lot of fun playing Total Annihilation from the PC from 1998 the other day. I'm gonna give that my Game of the Year. It's 2023. Fucking who cares? I think there's a distinction though between like a game that gets a bunch of 10s. And these Game of the Year things. So like, I think you're right. I think that people need to like for a game to be considered for Game of the Year, people need to be able to look at it and go, "Wow, that looked like a lot of money was spent on it."
Right. It has to be impressive. It has to be a spectacle. in certain ways. I mean, I guess you could say something like It Takes Two isn't that, but I mean,
No,
Well, It
no.
Takes Two had to win because otherwise a Nintendo game would have won, and people didn't want that.
I like the way you think, Guillaume. As bitter as possible. You're right there with me. Yeah.
So, I mean, Sekiro, yeah.
By the way, I can't believe It Takes Two won Game of the Year. That's just ridiculous to me. That game's,
having played it,
pretty mediocre, and like the characters are annoying as hell, and that's not Game of the Year. It's not Game of the Year in any year, as far as I'm concerned.
and like the attempt to tell like an important story, like is exactly.
But right there, exactly it. Right, it tells
Right.
an important story. It gets
Except
all
it kind
emotional.
of whiffs on it. It's not. It doesn't like it kind of doesn't give out a good message. Like it's not
Right.
like it's ridiculous.
I mean, so just to use the game, I'm loath to use the Game Awards as like the metric here, but I have a nice list in front of me, and so they get to have that.
Well, Dice Awards too, right?
The Dice Awards are a little bit different. So yeah, I should go
They're
pull
more
up their
credible.
winners.
Yeah, Dice
Yeah,
Awards
I mean-
are more credible, definitely.
2016 Overwatch won Game of the Year,
Okay.
which I don't think they would ever do again.
No, yeah, it seems like
They've moved into a new like Elden Ring is probably as far out as they'd go
yeah.
at this point. I mean, I'm surprised Sekiro won it in 2019, to be honest.
Yeah. Yep.
But
I mean, Untitled Goose Game did win Game of the Year
where?
in the Dice Awards
Oh, in Dice Awards, I can see that. Yeah, in Dice
yeah.
Awards,
in 2020 because I mean,
Yeah.
they're more concerned with game design rather than what's popular.
right? Because it's a bunch of game designers.
Yeah.
So
I respect these more than I do the game. I mean, obviously, the Game Awards is basically a commercial.
It's a commercial.
Yeah.
It's a commercial that occasionally finds time to tell you about a game in it.
Yeah, I mean, like all of these games, like going back to like maybe going back to like 2012, for example. 2012 was Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, right?
Right.
And then it's Journey, The Last of Us, Dragon Age Inquisition, Fallout 4, Overwatch, Breath of the Wild, God of War, Untitled Goose Game, Hades, It Takes Two.
So like and we with Dice Awards being more respectable, but they gave Journey a Game of the Year, and that's fucking do what now? Like that's the same kind of shit we're talking about, just from like the indie movie side of like this is important because it's artistic.
Right. I agree with that.
I enjoy Journey.
It's a good game. I don't know what else
it's
it
not-
went up
it is-
against.
There's
Right.
no whatever year. There's no way it was Game of the Year. It just isn't. Like it just isn't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Game of the Year it was up against. Well, let's just see what it's up against. I mean, it was up against Borderlands 2, Far Cry 3, XCOM Enemy Unknown, and The Walking Dead. Like, The Walking Dead kind of got screwed over there. The Walking Dead is a really good game. The first one,
Yeah, and
That's
it
really
was.
good.
But also, it's funny because like Borderlands 2. Do we count that as a comedy game?
yeah,
I didn't laugh at Borderlands 2.
But
yeah,
So-
it's trying to make you laugh.
it's trying.
Yeah.
It's trying.
I
Yeah.
wanted to reach through the screen and punch the writers, though.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, maybe. Borderlands, I think, got better reception than 2. And I think Borderlands was funnier because it was a little bit less like leaning into the skid. Like it was meant to be funny, but then they're like, "Well, Claptrap is an iconic character. He should never shut up." And I'm like, "I want to die right now, but I'm taking all you fuckers with me."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the I don't know things that Sean said was like top 20 of Metacritic kind of scores, and turns out that there is a list for like the best rated games of the decade on Metacritic, and of course lots of Nintendo games, which not exact. I guess more or less are comedy games. I think that's or
Yeah,
at least
but
like there's a lot of funny stuff. But
Yeah, but they're not comedy first.
yeah, but ignoring that, Portal 2.
Portal 2 is really funny.
Yeah, it is.
I would think it's I would say it's a comedy.
Yeah.
You know, they got Stephen Merchant. They who else is in that? Anyway, like it is meant
It's
to
the
make
J.K.
you,
Simmons, as I mentioned
Right.
when I replayed it on Switch. Yeah, it's kind of
And, you know,
I almost
very
forgot that he was in it, but yeah.
very exaggerated, very you know, and actually funny. You know, like I think that the jokes actually land, and so
Yeah.
you know, it's number 11 on the list.
It's certainly closer to what he's talking about. I'm not all the way there on it being a comedy game, but I get your point. There's another one that caught my eye. I just scrolled through the list real fast, and there's one that caught my eye. Hold on, what was it? Like I think MGS5 is a comedy game personally. Like that game is fucking hilarious all the time.
Like yeah, it's like almost at what point were they in on the joke with that?
Oh, it's completely. I mean, you can fault and extract animals for no good reason,
Yeah.
but just because it's funny. Like the sheer, it's all the AI are the dumbest morons in the world, and you could do whatever you want to them. Like it's basically just like, I'm gonna lay a bunch of traps, and then I'm gonna set off this Jack in the Box I found, and they're gonna go, "What's that?" and investigate it, and then I'm going to cover them in feathers and shoot them off into the sky. It's the dumb. I'm gonna make my helicopter play music when I arrive as my intro theme. Why? I don't know. It's very stupid. But you're right. I mean, there's not. They put Little Big Planet's on here. Little Big Planet 2. That's kind of a comedy game. But yeah, I mean, I think if it's a game that's really just setting out to do its joke, like Goat Simulator, it's a real game.
Yeah.
Goat Simulator's actually pretty funny. I played it on Game Pass. But yeah, it's not the most mechanically deep, and definitely it's not story deep. So I think to break into these lists, you have to at least be mechanically pretty robust. And so that's the challenge. If it's a game that's like, we want to do not comedy, but yeah, we want to make this funny game. Not all of them are mechanically robust games, and certainly Untitled Goose Game is probably the most mechanically robust from this list that he gave us, and it isn't like it just, and that's not to slight it. I've played that game all the way through multiple times, and I think I've completed everything but like one item on the secret checklist, which is the harder checklist, because there's like one or two that are just absolute pains in the ass, where it's like you have to reach the bar by 6 minutes or something crazy like that, and I just couldn't do it. But like GTA 5's on there. Like I guess
GTA 5 is a hilarious game.
Right.
Again, I always say that's one of the best written games I've ever played.
Is it a comedy game?
There's a lot of comedy in that game. I mean,
right.
I wouldn't say it's a comedy, but there's a lot of the characters, especially like, the interaction between, oh God, I can't remember, who's the psycho, and his cronies.
Right.
Yeah. It's like a lot of that is just ridiculous. But it's purposefully over the top.
Right. Like there are definitely
Trevor.
Yeah, you can definitely be funny.
Yeah, it's dark. It's dark humor though. It's not
right.
Funny.
And get a good rating, as long as there is, the funny is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is like part. I mean, but didn't Chicago win a bunch of awards? So like, you don't have to be actually artistically good to win awards.
Yeah.
In cinema.
That's the thing though. Like, what's interesting, it made me think of like GTA 5 versus say like High on Life. I think one of the problems, like there's definitely in comedies, there's the dialogue, but then there's also how people deliver it, right? And that's a very physical, a very
Right.
human sort of thing. And so I think that video games have a really hard time, especially with human characters, doing comedy in a convincing way, whereas with something like High on Life, it's easier to do that comedy with cartoon characters.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, there's a lot of really good television comedy and film comedy to some degree, but film because it's literally on the big screen. Like, it's a lot. They don't have to be quite so. The nuance is almost lost on the size of the screen. Like a lot of like the really good television comedy, it's the subtlety in how they react to what's happening. It's
facial
it's
expressions and
The Office was all in on this. Like that was the whole idea of it's like the whole conceit of The Office is a show inside a show. It let them just literally react to the camera shots.
Mhm.
Which they almost stop acknowledging it's a show within a show at some point, with the exception of the interviews.
Mhm.
But it's just a conceit to let them do things like, I'm going to stare at the camera now and go, what the shit?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to think like actual comedies that have received like major award runs, because it's not. I don't think it's not possible for games or for film or TV. I think there just has to be. It has to aspire to more than just, I'm going to make you laugh a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Right. Or, yeah, like The White Lotus.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's a comedy. It's a dark comedy. It's really, really dark, but it is a comedy. But also, it's saying something about its characters, about the environment that they evolve in. So, yeah, I think that's a good example of what you're talking about.
Right. I think Little Miss Sunshine won best screenplay and stuff like that. And like that is a hardcore comedy movie but you're right. It's trying to talk about a bunch of other stuff with it. It is a phenomenally good movie that also happens to deal with some stuff, but it kind of needs both.
Yeah, it's like sort of the comedy within pain and dysfunction sort of thing.
Right.
I'm looking through, of course, the like LucasArts adventure games, because those are comedy. And like one of the best regarded ones is Grim Fandango, but it's probably not the funniest one of the bunch. But it does nail the comedic delivery. I think that's one of the issues with older video games. Maybe like they didn't have the presentation down quite right, and so like there was a transition between the kind of the non CD games and the talkies.
Right.
Once they added the voice to CDs, and it took to games, and it took a while before I think that, I don't know, sound directors understood what they were doing, or figured out how to have dialogue that flowed, comedic that had comedy that had timing, comedic timing. And like I feel like Grim Fandango was kind of a turning point, or one of the early good examples. But then someone like Ron Gilbert also, like writes really funny games. But like there were a couple of games on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 called Death Spank 1 and 2. And
Yes.
I remember like buying that, and like it had gameplay like Diablo kind of a little bit. I remember trying to play that and not laughing once, even though, like his type of writing, his type of humor had been proven, to work on me. But didn't work at all because the actor who was delivering the lines was saying them too slowly, and like there was just like it kind of killed the jokes every time. You were just waiting for him to get to the punchline and losing patience. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong there. It's not just the writing.
It's tough.
But as I'm looking through like lists of, best scored games and stuff like that, like a lot of stuff comes up, like Cult of the Lamb. I haven't played it, but it is comedic, right?
Yeah. It's a streamer game, so it's got some integration stuff that was clever. Not necessarily the first to do it, but like it put it all together. It's like I think to get really, really high scores, like to be consistently scoring 9s and 10s, there's really two routes to it. You have a game that is mechanically extremely good, that is refined and polished to a degree that really is only achievable with infinite budget. So, like the second God of War, like the first God of War of this particular iteration, was new. It was novel. It really changed like how that franchise operated. It surprised people, and it was really, really good. Breath of the Wild, same deal. Like it changed up what they were doing. That's the other path. Is like this game's got new ideas. It's presenting them really well. It's delivering in a mechanically very strong way. Maybe it's not quite as polished, but it's very, very good. And it's got a lot of stuff we haven't seen before, or it's being done in ways we haven't seen before, or whatever. So I think when you're making a game that's new, when you're doing something new, that's probably the easier way to get to a 9 or a 10, because like I said, the other one relies on having the ability to polish the thing to an absolute veneer, like an absolute shine. And so that's the hard, I think that's why like games that are purely comedic focused struggle, because if you're asking somebody to come up with like a really novel gameplay conceit and also write like a really banger comedy, it's a big ask, and it's not necessarily what you would set out to do if you're trying to make a game that's silly and lighthearted, because that takes a lot of effort. Also, didn't Robert Downey Jr. get nominated for like supporting actor in Tropic Thunder? So like this is a movie where he literally does blackface. So I mean,
yeah. Yep.
Like you could get awards for comedy. It's fine. I don't think he won. I think he got nominated, which is wild.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just hard.
I'm just thinking of Robert Downey Jr. in that movie. It's so ridiculous. He's a white guy who is so dedicated to his role that he dyes his skin black. It's so ridiculous. Yeah. It's so ridiculous. I'm sorry.
It is commentary, which I guess helps it a little bit.
Yes,
but it is absolutely bizarre that got nominated. Yes, he was nominated for supporting actor. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably space there, but I think that the reality of the situation is the game would have to do something that would make it a fun game without the humor, if that makes sense. Like, I wouldn't want to play a LucasArts game that's not funny. And I say that because they made a couple that tried to be a little like LucasArts point and click. Like The Dig wasn't as funny, and I didn't like it that much. This is The Dig, right?
It certainly is a LucasArts game of that name. I couldn't tell you much about it, really.
I'm trying to see if that's the one I'm thinking it is. Yeah, that was the one. That like, it's not that it isn't funny. I mean, it's still relatively, but you know, it's one of those things where it's like the gameplay itself is fine, but it's not like killer. But the writing was really what you came for in a lot of those games, and so it'd probably be hard for any of them to get a 9 now. It might have been able to get a 9 then because that was still fairly novel, and that novelness was important. But getting a 10, I mean, there's so few games get 10s, like so few that I don't even know that it's a comedy thing. I think it's just so nobody wants to give. Well, few people want to give 10s.
Right, and there's I guess few movie reviewing outlets, TV reviewing outlets score in a 100-point scale.
Right.
Whereas that seems to be so much more common and for reviewing games. And because of that, there's like this belief that, well, a perfect score is for a perfect game, so I can't give a perfect score. And so you just don't see them as much.
I don't think a 10. I just don't know that I've ever played a game I give a 10. Like legitimately, I don't know that I've ever walked away from a game going, that game was a fucking 10. It's just like I got one. I got one that I want to go check.
But would you give like a 5 stars or 4 stars on a 4-star scale to a game? Probably.
Yeah, probably. But if having more layers of granularity gives me the ability to do that. The NWR system has quarter points, and I'm quite happy that it has quarter points. That works out nicely for me, personally. But we don't necessarily need it. I'm a bit surprised looking at the game that I was like, oh, you know what, might have a really high score that I would consider it to be comedy. I bet Ghost Trick's up there, but no, actually, it's only got an 83 Metascore.
Yeah, it feels like one of those games where it would get it would get that kind of score because people would be like, I like this game, but I wouldn't recommend it for everybody.
Right. Also, it's $20-$30, and it's so short. It's like 6-7 hours.
Yeah.
And that might be another part of it. Like, it's hard to make good comedy the longer the game is, the tougher time you're going to have making it consistently funny. Usually, comedy is punchier when it's shorter, but then, the critics acting as kind of less like critics and more like product evaluators will dock points because, well, you can't give a 10 to a short game. That's just not done. None when it's full price.
I gave it a 9.5. Thank you. So I think I docked the appropriate amount of points. Although that is the game, like I said, that John and I talked about, because I think you were reviews editor at that point. Because I was like, okay, what's the metric for a 10? Because I might be sitting on it. And then I gave it a 9.5 anyway. Because fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, to me, it's a game where I can't see it reasonably being improved in terms of what it's trying to do. I can't see it doing that any better, whether that's from a gameplay standpoint, from a visual standpoint, an audio standpoint. For what that game is, I can't see it being executed any better than it is.
Like, I could have, it didn't. So I was just thinking, what about WarioWare? And it did not. But WarioWare is a comedy game, and the first time that card got played, like the micro game concept, I could absolutely have seen if that blew a bunch of people away. But you could never make a WarioWare game now that gets 10s. Like, it's just not possible. I just legitimately don't think it's possible, because I think people have expectations they're coming in with, and you can't really surprise them. Yeah. And you can't make a WarioWare game that's polished like fucking Last of Us. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see the WarioWare team get $100 million development budget, because after they've spent the first $10 million and they're trying to figure out what to do with the rest of it, I'd love to see what their ideas are. Like, all right, you got $90 million left, boys. What are you going to do? What if we shot a live action documentary? Fuck it. I don't know. But were we about to say, Guillaume?
Well, just one last example I kind of found in the Stanley Parable.
Yeah.
That's comedic.
It's comedic.
Yeah. And that got really good scores. It's one of those games that did what it set out to do, and probably couldn't have done it better than it did.
Yep. Yeah, I think if it's the mechanical comedy, like the gameplay is mechanically funny, I think that's going to really not be possible to hit that level of polish and refinement that something to get a 10 would need. Because a lot of the games that are just mechanically funny are funny in part because they're kind of jank. Excite Truck's really funny, but it's never going to get a 10. It's because the jank is everywhere.
But Mo, the jank.
But you can make a super sandwich.
You can do a lot of things in that game. A lot of it's not good. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I would be like, well, that game is comedic first and foremost, and it is, kind of a transcendent stick with you experience. To me, it was probably WarioWare, like the first time playing that, and that didn't get it. So maybe he's right. Maybe it's just not achievable.
I mean, for me, it was Duke Nukem Forever easily. Come get some, if you will.
I mean, that game is funny.
It's funny in a lot of ways. You are correct.
It's funny now in different ways than it was when it came out, too.
Yep.
It's the ever-evolving humor of Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem Forever is it grows on you.
Mm-hmm.
You should definitely get it checked out.
Yep.
I don't know. It's I think he's right. I don't think that I tried to talk myself into it, and I don't think I can. I don't think the rubric that critics judge games on will allow there to be enough of a critical mass of them that would say this game that is primarily focused on being funny is a 10 out of 10. I think you'll see one-offs. I think you'll see like individual outlets will encounter a game whose driving ethos is be funny, and they'll give a 10 to it, and they might be like 2 in some really wild cases. I'm looking at, like I said, WarioWare right now. It got a 100 from Yahoo, which used to review games, and it got a bunch of things like a 97, a 95, another 95. Like, it had stuff that was in there, but it didn't, it wasn't like critical mass. I also think though that comedy games don't need it the same way. So I'm formulating this theory as I talk, so bear with me. Games that just run through the review scores and get these like resplendent numbers, this rarefied air of these top 20 games of all time as rated by their Metacritic score. They kind of like that's sort of the reason they get talked about. They get talked about because they're these like highly polished, perfected products. Whereas a lot of these like games that are comedic first, they get talked about because of how much fun people have with them. And so they might not get talked about for like how transcendently good they are, but in a weird way they come off better because people talk about how funny they were, and they end up getting the same effect in terms of being exposed to the world as they would otherwise. Like High on Life, we've been talking about. High on Life has been doing really well in part because people have been playing it and word of mouth has been really good on how funny it is. Streaming has given that game a bit of a boost because, again, people see how funny it is and then they go play it for themselves. Cult of the Lamb, which you talked about earlier, which has a lot of comedy in it. This was the same deal. It's a streaming game. It's a game for streaming. It interacts with Twitch directly. The Jackbox games are built around, like, I wonder if that's it. I wonder if it's like, rather than achieving a bunch of 10s, the comedy equivalent of this is that your game takes over the streaming platforms. Like, it's almost like the target audience that you want to hold those games in high esteem isn't reviewers, it's content creators, which I know this is anathema to us, but it's almost like you're attempting to find your way with a different audience that will give that game the critical evaluation that it deserves in a weird way. I don't know. This is some like strange abstraction where it's like, do these games need to be reviewed by different people than currently write reviews?
Yeah. I mean, there's inherent biases in game criticism for sure.
All right, so I actually drilled into WarioWare. It actually got a bunch of perfect scores. G4 gave it 1, Gaming Age gave it 1, Game Now gave it 1. NWR gave it a 9.5. All right, place your bets. Who was it?
A 9.5 was it TYP?
Let's see. Oh no, the link is broken. It's one of the old games where the link's broken on our site. Sklens actually gave it a 9.5.
Yeah.
So Sklens has just given us a 10. We'd have been up there.
I mean, it's no Mario Tennis Power Tour, but I mean, what is?
God damn it!
Right?
Yeah, Stan wasn't reviewing it though.
Yes, it was. I mean, Stan didn't so much review it as just fawn all over it,
reveal it to the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Collated it. I mean, look at like that. That's actually a pretty good example of a game that did, because I see 5 or 6 10s from major outlets and a bunch of high 9s.
I guess it's kind of that Mario Power Tennis thing. I mean, I don't know whether we have to go through the full explanation of that thing.
It was like 20 years ago at this point.
It was almost 20 years ago. It was 2005.
Basically,
that's insane.
Stan folks that used to co-host the podcast with Carl in its early days at times and stuff, reviewed the GBA version, as if you will. It was really its own game of Mario Tennis. That actually has, single player and an RPG thing, essentially, and whatnot. It's the kind of thing that when people complain about new Mario Tennis games, it was not like that. That people did like these things. And because he had the audacity to give it a 10, it became this figure of mockery. And I suppose that is analogous, in a way, to the subject here, isn't it? It's just it's just some things that aren't worthy of that. Does it execute on what it is perfectly? I don't care. It doesn't matter. If it's that kind of game, it can't be kind of that. You know what I mean? Like that. So I think it is sort of something. So obviously, I don't think Mario Power Tennis is terribly funny. The advanced, the GBA version.
It's got some comedy in it, because it is a Camelot game.
It's got fucking emojis in it, is what it's got. But the point is that it's not about, in that case, it's not because it's a comedy game, it's because it's kind of perceived to be frivolous in a different way than comedies are, but still, comedies, by their very nature, are often also considered to be frivolous. And there is some overlap with that situation and this topic.
So I do want to perhaps challenge you on that, though, just a little bit. So the reason the end of that joke, though, is that we were cited on some website as like the worst review of the year because like in the Nintendo bag. But Stan might disagree with you though about this, because he starts the review with the following sentence:
amazing, hit it.
Mario Tennis Power Tour. This game is significant.
Yeah, no. That's I mean.
Oh man, that is back of the box material.
Oh man, he's hunting box quotes.
Man.
We were not the only 10 for Mario Tennis. The Detroit Free Press, famed gaming outlet, gave it a 10.
Yeah, if you want to be on
Mario Tennis saved my life.
That's right. And so can you. I don't know. I'm trying to think like what else might do it. Like I think it's just tough because it's so rare for these games to be significant. I can't believe he fucking wrote that sentence with a straight face. Motherfucker.
I know. It is
This game is significant, period.
Yep. It is. It's right up there Right up there with...
that smacks to me of someone telling Stan that it's like, you should only really give a 10 to a game that you could consider to be significant. So it's like, just stuck it at the front of the review. It's like, well, it is, so still a 10. Right, moving on.
It's just right there. It's like, fuck. Can't believe he did this. Like, you're right. I think it literally comes down to somebody going, really? It's like, just put that there.
And it's like, screw you. It's significant. I mean, it's that's the thing. I mean, again, I kind of bristle at the notion that it has to be significant to give it a top score. You know what I mean? It's just like, I mean, look, if people don't want to, if they're reviewing games, they would reserve the 10. Obviously, James, you sort of said, you're reluctant to use it or whatever. They want to reserve it for a particular kind of accomplishment or whatever. That's fine. But I don't know whether we need to, for other people that when they use it, it's, oh, well, it's clearly illegitimate. It's just like, first of all, dwelling on the score is in itself, as we've said many times, just sort of very superficial, and kind of just not particularly productive or informative.
And it's not like you can do a good job writing a review if you start with the score. I might have a gut feeling, but a lot of times the score is like the dead ass last thing I do. Because I'll sit there and I'll write and I'll think about how I feel about it, and I'll spend time poking at it and going let me, because as I write it, my thoughts about the game will kind of materialize in a way, and things like you get some distance from actually playing it. You might think of things, but you know what? I'll tell you, what game's not significant? If you read the review, Metroid Dread, not significant. Not according to John Raridan. You know how I know? Because he doesn't say in the very first sentence, this game is significant.
Right.
I'm looking... You know what? They should have had, in the old days, with the N64, where it has, if it's compatible with the Rumble Pack or the controller pack.
Exactly, like a checkbox.
Significance should be a thing on the side of the box, like a check mark
I feel like it's time for, maybe me to come out of review retirement and start off my next review with...
Just instead of the recommended...
This game is insignificant.
It's insignificant.
I'm thinking of, the quintessons from Transformers the movie, where they just say innocent and then you get executed, but it's just insignificant and the game goes into the great bin of gaming history. And every now and again he says, no, actually, thumb up, it is significant.
Oh, I'm just going through all the 10s, and so far not a single reviewer has had the audacity or the conciseness to tell me in the very first sentence if the game is significant or not, which leads me to question if these are significant. This one just says sometimes games are the right place at the right time. Nope. It's not what I want. I want to know if it's significant. That's all I care about.
A life of significance.
That's right.
Conscience.
I only play games that are explicitly named as significant. In the
that's part. I think this is part of the conversation, right? About the comedy games, the reviewers of video games have been craving legitimacy, or the whole industry really craving the approval of everyone else, and that's what leads to statements like that, or that leads to IGN saying that GTA 4's story was basically The Godfather or something. Anyway,
certainly like Goodfellas. In a very direct way, it is like it. It's derived from it.
Yeah, basically.
I think the challenge though is that that's not just a video game thing. I think that's pretty much any sort of you see it in art reviews too, or did you know that there are publications that review architecture, which it's not like they can go fix it. They built the goddamn building. Or even things like the Michelin, go read what it takes to get a Michelin star and you'll laugh because it's like it's so up its own ass. It's like, well, the meal has to speak to something. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's fucking food, man. I don't need you to have invented some way to freeze dry gelatin so that I can eat them as pellets and that it speaks to the human condition. I mean, that's the what's the name of that movie? It's The Menu. Like, The Menu is just satire of that style of like Hoyt cuisine and the culture that's written around it, where it's like this is this food good? Well, no, but it's significant. This is a significant dining experience. You see it with film. Like they talked about in the email, you see it with television, the era of the prestige TV, where it's like we can't. Greg, you mentioned it last week. We can't just kill off a character and bring them back as their German cousin. It doesn't work anymore.
No, exactly.
It's a disaster for
what
us all.
price would you put on significance if we have to give that up? I don't know whether it's worth it.
I mean, yeah.
Like, funnily, a lot of the most like kind of associated with the era of prestige TV shows I can think of, like The Sopranos and The Wire, are very funny, but they would never be considered comedies, obviously. No. But that's like some of the most I've ever laughed at anything. Even though there are plenty of things in that are, not at all funny, quite harrowing or horrible and unpleasant. But like that oftentimes is when I find the most humor, because it feels more like earned. You know what I mean? Like, where it's just I don't know, probably doesn't happen so much with other people or even with myself when I was younger, but there's something about something that is explicitly labelled as a comedy that's like, okay, this thing is entirely for the purpose of making you laugh, that makes it harder for it to do its job on me. It's like,
guards up.
Go on then. Be fucking funny. Get on with it. Whereas if you're watching something because you're absorbed in the story it's telling, the characters, and then it's funny, it just, you don't have a defense for that. It just gets you with that because you're not expecting it. It can be just the absurdity of the thing involved just hits you harder. So, I'm not the biggest person on out and out comedies in the world, and I suppose, that would probably apply to games as well as other things.
Yeah. I think the games that are funniest and that are just trying to be funny are ones that are like barely hanging on, and then they're also doing absurd bullshit. Like there's a certain like, oh my god, what's happening level of comedy that you can get for free. But comedy writing is so hard, and
it must be incredibly difficult, especially like you think about you're doing like stand up. Again, it's just like the whole thing. I am here, and you are sitting in an audience in a nightclub, whatever venue it is, to laugh at me saying stuff. That's it, what I mean? I mean, that is really hard. That seems so difficult. The absolute, courage and just self-confidence it must take to put yourself in that is remarkable to me.
Well, I don't think we're going to be able to go ahead.
No, I just wanted to go back to the whole "this game is significant" thing.
I've yet to find another NWR review that starts with that phrase. So here's my promise to you.
You're going to build like a scraper tool or whatever to find any other reviews that say that from the entire database.
At least, like, the phrase "this is significant" gets to the point. It doesn't waste our fucking time. Okay, I'm gonna read to you something. Okay.
Okay.
Criminals are an ugly, cowardly lot, more worthy of pity and disdain than admiration. This is what you'll learn playing through the single-player campaign in Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto 4. The series cheered and criticized for glorifying violence has taken an unexpected turn. It's gun legit. Oh, sure, you'll still blow up cop cars, run down innocent civilians, bang hookers, assist drug dealers and lowlifes, and do many, many other bad deeds, but at a cost to main character Nico Bellic's very soul. GTA 4 gives us characters in a world with a level of depth previously unseen in gaming, and elevates its story from a mere shoot-'em-up to an Oscar-caliber drama.
Oh,
Every
boy.
facet of Rockstar's new masterpiece is worthy of applause.
Nico was a war criminal, by the way. So, like,
Yeah.
I don't know how him.
He
having
already
sex with-
didn't have a soul. Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I know what Rockstar is about, what their writing is about.
Well, they're about Oscar caliber, entertainment. That's what they're about.
Oscar-caliber drama, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oscar caliber drama.
Yeah.
Like,
Without,
I mean,
so
that-
the paragraph ends like, without question, Grand Theft Auto 4 is the best game since Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. That's probably like the least what's the word? Bloated thing being said about the game.
The leanest statements.
Right.
You're right. He could have just said this game is significant, and then it was
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah.
Problem solved. So that could just be the whole review. To be honest, like you could just say
it's not just a review; it's a whole system of reviewing things. Because we had virtual console reviews, and it was recommended for fans, recommended for everyone, not recommended. That's too nuanced. That's three. It's significant or not significant. That's it. That's all you need. It's with the Sisk and Liebert, isn't it? They had the thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
The only problem is there was two of them, so that's too much nuance. You did one person
Absolutely.
with one thumb.
One thumb.
You probably chop the other hand off just in case that thumb were to get involved. We can't have too much nuance.
So I could take it down a little bit more though. So you proposed a binary system. This game is significant. This game is not significant. What if I just don't acknowledge the insignificant games? So it's just this game is significant. That's the only metric. And then other games just simply don't exist. And you don't have to review them if they don't exist.
They are by definition in this construct trivial, aren't they? Essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So then the only game. So I just searched in NWR's archive. The only game that exists is Mario Tennis Power Tour for GBA. That's it.
It is the only game, past, present, and future.
Of NWR. It's the only game that we acknowledge. All right. Well, I don't think we're going to be able to find the comedy game that's going to get universal acclaim as a transformative, significant experience. But you can ask us what games we believe to be significant, and if it's not Mario Tennis Power Tour, it's none of them. By writing us an email to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That is rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Greg, what is our music to wrap this show up?
Well, just before I mention that, we should mention Radio Trivia Podcast Edition.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
It's back for 23 with TYP, aforementioned TYP, of course, one of the people you could guess right in the WarioWare review because it's been around that long. I feel sure he reviewed one of them or something.
I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he did.
But TYP hosted along with Steven Rodriguez, Windy Man. So that's obviously well worth going for. I don't think I got anything right this time. Absolute nightmare.
Oh wow, I haven't listened yet. Blanked. That's a lot.
Yeah. It was a few weeks ago I actually listened to it, so maybe I'm forgetting something that was like easy up front, but I don't think so. I think it was all pretty tough for me anyway. But it's always fun just listening to the music and then the background once it's revealed. And it's it is fun trying. Sometimes it might be like a total red herring. Like you think, oh yeah, this reminds me of this, and your brain starts working on it. You're way up the wrong street. Nowhere near, but it's still kind of fun until you find out how wrong you are. But yeah, there's that. So, and then with the ending music, I'm going for something from Goldeneye. I think we've used it once before with a request for the dam level, which is, it's a pretty, I might have gone with that if it hadn't already been used, because it's the first level. It's, it's pretty memorable in that way, and it kind of, typifies the soundtrack, to a fair degree.
It's very Bondish.
When I was just, kind of scanning the soundtrack, I really didn't appreciate just how massive it is, and how many, multiplayer specific songs there are. There's loads of them, and almost all of them do work in the main Bond motif, you know, like it's just like, how can you kind of remix and rework the Bond theme into like different moods for different levels and sort of settings? Goodness knows how many ways. It's kind of impressive. There were a few different composers on this one, but there's a few songs I think that give themselves away as being the work of Grant Kirkhope because they are like so. I think I said this when we talked about it. Mentioned earlier on, like in a retrospective sense, 14 years ago, whatever it was. Like, the thing is, when I played Goldeneye, Banjo-Kazooie didn't exist yet. But when you look at it in retrospect, it's like, oh god, like it's Bond as played by Banjo. You know, like it's some of the brass and all that like sounds so similar. But Kirkhope like did contribute some songs, but not all of them or anything. Like I think again, big soundtrack, not a surprise. I think Robin Beanland worked on some of the Conker guy, and then another chap. I'm struggling to remember his name. Graham, I think his first name is, but. Yeah, it's great work, but I'm going to go with that Aztec level just because I heard it earlier on and it's just, God, this is still really burned in my brain from having to do it that many times. So,
and I bet a lot of people haven't heard it ever.
Well, I think you only had to do everything on Secret Agent to unlock it. So it wasn't the worst thing in the world to unlock that. It's the next one that was nightmarish because you had to beat Aztec on Double O to unlock that. That was, and some of the other levels are really hard on Double O as well. But like that still, like it was, you did have to unlock it. So maybe it's not one of the most obvious ones on there. But it's just kind of one of the more different ones, I guess, because of the different setting based on a different movie or whatever. But really, it's kind of a soundtrack that feels quite different in retrospect, but it is still quite fun. And I think everything's okay in terms of the sound emulation because there was some concern, like they did this YouTube clip or a Twitter clip or something where it's like, oh yeah, remember this? And then people were like, there's instruments missing in that.
Yes.
So it was like, oh my god, they messed up the emulation. I don't know whether they culled it from an earlier kind of version. They hadn't straightened out all the bugs yet. N64 sound emulation is a little bit tricky because there was no dedicated sound processor. So I think it can kind of go wrong pretty easily with that. But, I haven't noticed anything that screams like instruments missing playing it so far. So all pretty, it seems good so far. But I'm sure, as is usually the case with these expansion pack releases, there'll be people out there ready to document all the ways in which it is not perfectly accurate. So we can look forward to that.
Pedantry, my favorite. On that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This podcast was significant. 5.
Citizen Kane of podcasts.
It's the biggest lie ever told on this show.
I mean, it's... No! There's been bigger ones.